Warning: this ritual should only be attempted by those who have a reasonable level of culinary expertise and hospitality experience. The minute of these instructions are incredibly important. As with any other dinner party, a good host invites their guests to share their home. All principles of hospitality are similar to appropriate hosting standards, with one caveat. While you host this party, your home belongs to the guests, so it is not your own. With that being said, no one must enter your home once the ritual is begun, as it could catastrophically after the host-to-guest dynamic of this ritual. The following details of the ritual, in terms of the ruleless and host, are interchangeable. This ritual was conceived by the 14th century master Chef Gaulmaitre. The original details are not entirely clear, but rumors exist the formulae were not entirely of its own creation, but this case was the first resulted in some measure of success. Since its inspiration, the ritual has been attempted throughout history, often with terrible results, most notably the Feast of Fools of 1430, which led to the attempt of dissolving the holiday by the Council of Basel the following year. The guests are not typical beings and must not be treated with heightened sense of respect. Two major facets compose with this ritual: culinary and hospitality. It all appears as none of them are restricted by time or cultural influences, and may be suggestive to the ritualist. If every guest is satisfied and leaves their devotion contented, you may ask a favor. The last question from one guest. As many appreciation bargains, you may ask for wealth, power, or any other typical worldly desire, but you must direct the question with the appropriate individual, and all requests must be specific. You will learn each guest is appropriate for their type of flavor throughout the night. As you learn more about them, as many good hosts would, the guests are known to be very fickle, so very great deal of importance is stressed on being clear and humble. The magnitude of your request must be parallel to the perceived success of the dinner party. For example, if you barely manage to survive, requesting a loved one to be returned from death would be offensive. It's important to study these rules and stipulations once the meal has been served, as the guests will arrive, and it will be very rude to host direct your attention away from the guest by checking the guidelines. 5 dishes must be prepared, all in single servings, served in single separated spots by 2 tables. There are 2 discretionary choices available to the ritualists, but they must follow the guidelines strictly. 1 dish will be served for 4 guests, and 1 final dish for the ritualist. There is a discrepancy pan between which either choice works efficiently. Both out are known to serve true function. Option 1. A dish cooked from anything that has been killed by the ritualist, but it must be something ritualists themselves would eat. See the good host rule. Option 2. A plethora of clean raw vegetables that are endemic of the region, preferably harvested by the ritualists. The finest cut of meat, which the ritualist can afford, bovine tenderloin, is known best to work well. In the account that the ritualist is a hunter, it's best to use a prize game of their victory. The meat must not be fish, but it may be poultry, beef, pork, or game. This dish could be served with mashed potatoes or rice, with bread, gravy, or sauces that are not mandatory but are rumored to be appreciated. Sources needed. Perhaps the easiest dish to accommodate, and the dish must not be cooked by the ritualist. It must cheaply be obtained in large quantity, lower in quality, and very calorically dense. Modern options have proven to be easily accessible. McDonald's, or such as other fast food, appears to be an excellent choice. Similar to dish 1, there are 4 main options available for your 4th guest. Option 1. Anything that may cause severe bodily harm or are death to the ritualist if consumed. but must be organic in nature. If the ritualist has severe allergies, those may prove an excellent choice. Otherwise, the flesh by poisonous creature, such as frogs or the pufferfish. The octopus amounts of poisonous produce, typically funguses, serve as well. The amount must be significant to the cure ritualist. Option 2. This option is directed contrast from the previous choice. It must be milk as fresh as possible, no longer than 1.5 hours from the source. Human milk is acceptable. This dish must be something that is the ritualist must do enjoys, yet infrequently thinks of responses you think you have if someone were to ask you about their favorite food. The dish must be appropriately enjoyed by the ritualist. It is recommended that the dish that the ritualist has made on many occasions, and thus has very little likelihood of poor results. In one account, a host who had her own dish catered, not to their satisfaction, died of expiration shortly after the meal was finished. Good host rule. All these meals, aside from the main 4 in option 1, there must be in a fashion that the ritualist would eat. If the ritualist is a vegetarian or vegan, any meat or dairy must be served that way, that proffers to be the most palatable, alluring to them. 2 tables must be used in performing this ritual. 1 large table with the ample room for 4 guests to eat, and place settings, drinking glasses, and etc. This table should be ideally squared, round, so the guests are able to see each other and the host, without turning their bodies. This is known for the line of sight rule. If any other shape of the table is used, no guest must be at head or foot at the table. If a guest is at head, another must be at foot, keeping the mind of the line of sight rule. The second table must be smaller, personalized table, may be large enough to accommodate multiple guests, but it must be smaller than the guests and the only host 1 place in the setting. The 2 tables must never be touched. This will be the ritual's table. This separation is important. You may think distinction is your servant, permitted to dine as your masters. This separation is important. You may think this distinction as though you're a servant, permitted to dine with your masters. There's a typical formal layout of a 1-course meal, appropriate for the ritual's culture, or one that they are very familiar with, must be set up, including not exclusively a fork and a knife, water glass, wine glass, placemat or charger, candles appropriate to table size, serviettes, napkins, water cafre, and wine cafre. If a guest were to run out of water or wine, it's appropriate for the host to fill their glasses, although not mandatory, as the guests may pour for themselves. Carafes may never run out. If they appear to be low, the host must promptly refill them. The wine provided for them must be something that the host would drink, alcohol-free if it abstains from alcohol or any other typical type of beverage, such as apple cider or juice. Once the guests arrive, the ritualist becomes the host and must follow the certain hospitality guidelines regardless of culture. 1. Never touch a guest without their permission. This has never been a permission given, so far as anyone knows. 2. Never touch the belongings of another guest. This includes their space, setting, and meal. Once served, their cup must not be touched if being filled by the host. 3. Never directly address the single guest. Questions or conversations must organically find themselves directed at the guest. If they were talking and you inquired the subject, there is no exception to this rule. That is the final question. 4. Never address a guest by name or provide any sort of nickname. Even if you know their name, you don't. They are both non-dominical and connected in so many systems of technology. Never let the caravans run dry, which is number 5. 6. Never let the candles burn down entirely. 7. Above all else, never reveal your name to your guests, such as titles such as chef, doctor, political, or military position. may have been provided if it comes up organically. This includes nicknames and initials. 8. The final question must not be directed to the appropriate guest. 9. The host must try their best to enjoy themselves. This may be the most difficult rule to add here too, so the rituals can be very insensitive and stressful. But consider, is a dinner party truly worth attending if your host is in shambles? The extent of consequences, nor failed dinners, and broken rules are not fully known. There is potential to improve or change the ritual itself, although deviation is strongly advised against. Such as consequences have been noted. Host ritualist who fails to enjoy their own dish or may expiate or die of toxic shock syndrome. A host ritualist who fails to provide the appropriate satisfactory the meals of their guests may suffer a practically gruesome end, or in some other case, lack of, therefore, see notable cases of failure. The fate met for the unsatisfactory meal is specific to the infringe upon host. A host ritualist who fails to accommodate this in any particular hospitality rule must find themselves living an undesirable or so-called cursed life. Gualmetier Pont Andermer 1325, unknown desire possibly by culinary prowess, a Russian peasant and self-proclaimed mystic, St. Petersburg, 1915, desired to be the lasting fame of ephemery. The abstract American artist, New York, 1959, desired to simply to have a dinner party. The list of this difficult of property to be determined, as much as information is based off of failed rituals, appear to be a little more than rumors and often attributed as a sacrilege, worships of demons, such as the cases of the dissolution of Knights Templar, insanity, or works of political training, the Great Leap Forward. It is rare that survivors exist, or even they are capable of living willing to discuss the events of their failures. It is also important to note that without understanding what is the ritualist's request to do the final question. It's impossible to know whether or not the ritual was a success. Despite the Gualmetier being truly first understood the case of this ritual, the earliest known historical account is also one of the only cases with any real substantiation of disaster. The failure of this ritual is not known to be the cause of eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. It is also theorized that the first failure, and perhaps attempt, of this ritual was purportedly known individual. He had agilely attempted the ritual in the early decades of the 14th century BCE, or possibly as early as the 6th century BCE. The ritualist in question was burdened with everlasting life and doomed to walk the world without love or purpose for an eternity. According to the associated myths, he desired to bring his brother back from the dead.